That's recording. All right, so we are back again with this is episode 7. So I did find out it was episode 6, the last one of the Journey Home, the Story of Us podcast, and we're here with Tales on Wind of Time and Bucky with his stories. And we're doing some of the newer ones that you had recently just done today. We have a couple series,
Yeah,
so we're interested in
on
that. On the witch.
the 16th of February. I
Oh,
like for time travelers and do the 16th of March. That would be weird.
we could. We can go forward and backwards, left, right, up and down. Time is an
But
illusion.
who's to say we're what restricted by the construct of the made up calendar that they use?
Yes, and again, what calendar are we going by? Because
Yeah,
you can see, again, and there's other people I've been blessed to work with that are talking about calendars and how, again, all of them are kind of playing out at different times, but all now. So you have the Gregorian calendar that's playing out its own ticking time that is mixed with an older pagan calendar. You have it mixed with the Mayan calendar. And how do they all converge? You have even the moon calendar. So all of these things are playing
yeah.
together. We don't like the series that we're going to read, Nomad Life. As much as we want to think that things like this could be taking place thousands or even millions of years ago, and I say millions, we actually don't know what time are we actually measuring it with. How do we know we're not an eternal Groundhog Day?
That would just be weird. I would hate having to go through that because wake up do the same thing. And even if you change a little bit of it, it's the same thing still happens, and then you go to sleep and yeah, that would
Well,
that would be the antithesis of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, as they would
yes,
say.
the same exact thing, but we know. What if it is the same day being played over and more people awaken out of the Groundhog Day? So therefore, they're creating these variations and changes into the next day in which certain code is being played out over and over again. You'll see stories that repeat themselves over and over again, but as more people become aware, it changes the variable, it changes the story just slightly. And the more that are aware, more that are awake, more that level of awareness and awake that they're in starts to really exponentially balloon out to change the next day reset. And so you can even go a step further and say, well, if we're all in that Groundhog Day, then we really do not die. We do live, keep living. And the perception or belief of death is actually what causes us to die, just like the perception and belief of time, which is causing us
But
to
we
run.
we went over that on one of our Facebook lives. Remember, we talked about how even though in one of the stories talked about how even though your time here in the physical may be over or come to an end, your thread still goes on because you're still alive in the in the time of people that are actually still living because your memories are still there, your impact on their life is still there. So in a way, you are still living. You're just not there in the physical.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
if anybody's interested, I think Facebook changed their lives though, so that they're only
yeah,
available for 30 days. But we can also go through that with a podcast, future broadcast. We're going through it now to actually kind of get more people to think along those lines. Like I said, it's just a thread. You're just doing a thread on a different timeline, a different loop, a different thread
yeah.
loom, but it's still happening. You're still going. How many people, I think a few people had the conversation, people that are passing over, yeah, they passed over from this timeline into another one. They just woke up somewhere else.
Yeah, and we
There's,
also talked about in one of our Facebook lives the transition that a essence or soul or however you want to put it, the transition that they take from this physical place and how that would how my interpretation or how I would put my interpretation on it and that transition would look like how instead of being thought as restricted here in the physical, you're able to view the essence of everything in a different viewpoint.
mm-hmm.
you're able to open it up a little bit more than being like, oh well, that's red or that's blue or however you want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you find it like, and we find it with, like I said, as an essence, we find it that you can see spirits. I think we actually we talked about once, and you didn't want to talk about it. Your what you experience with spirits, but again, you see spirits that are talking. They're slightly in a different phase or different existence outside of our own, but you're still able to communicate with them. So that
Yeah,
is in a way showing that there's a certain resonance frequency that they're interacting with that is a little bit different than this one, this physical, the denseness of this 3D timeline we're in,
yeah,
which sometimes is not easy, being in a dense, heavy timeline of 3D while still being an energy
yeah.
body.
But we talked about a lot of that sort of deep uh, theological stuff, I guess you would say, from what most people would call it.
An infinite pool of possibilities. So, and which we're
Yeah,
still welcoming other people in. We didn't try to get more people to invite in. I guess they were a little busy today, but it's always open, the podcast, for anybody to come in.
yeah.
Okay, so usually I start off on the ones, on the stories?
Ladies first, remember.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to read Nomad's Life. Nomad's Life. Sounds like no man's to me.
That's what. Hey, that's misogynistic. Come on now.
It is. Nomad's Life. Which I think that a lot of light workers are kind of getting into the nomad life lately, or at least the travel and the caravan and whatnot. So I will start. Gathering what we need. As dawn broke over the vast frozen landscape, the air was crisp and filled with anticipation. A group of indigenous hunters stirred from their slumber, their breath visible in the frosty morning light. They gathered around a flickering fire, the warmth a welcome contrast to the chill that gripped the world outside. Today they would embark on a hunt for the great mammoth, a task that required meticulous preparation and teamwork. The air buzzed with energy as the hunters set to work, each knowing their role in the intricate dance of survival. One hunter knelt beside the river bank, focusing intently on a piece of chert, which steady hands he chipped away at the stone, crafting sharp clovis points. Each strike of the tool was deliberate, designed to produce a blade that would pierce the thick hide of their quarry. Hours passed, the rhythmic sound of flint striking flint echoing in the stillness. The hunter's fingers grew sore, yet they continued, knowing that the success of the hunt depended on his skill. Meanwhile, others ventured into the nearby woods to gather sturdy branches. They selected the most resilient ones, knowing they would need to withstand the weight of the mammoth. As they worked, their shared stories of past hunts, their laughter mingled with the rustles of leaves. They knew that teamwork was essential. Each branch they gathered was a step closer to their goal. In a clearing, another group dug pits, their breaths fogging in that cold air. They worked tirelessly, the sound of shovels scraping against the earth punctuating their efforts. Each pit had to be deep enough to ensnare the massive creature, camouflaged with branches and leaves to conceal its presence. They exchanged glances of determination, understanding that this was not just a hunt, it was a test of their ingenuity and resolve. As twilight approached, the hunters gathered once more around the fire, their arms weary but their spirits high. They shared a meal, nourishing themselves for the long night ahead. As the stars twinkled above, they worked together to assemble their pikes, carefully planting the sharp tips they had fashioned earlier into the ground, a deadly trap awaiting the unwitting mammoth. Finally, they crafted at Atalets. Don't know if that's misspelled.
Addle, Road.
Addles. Thank you very much. The spear throwing device that would give them the range and accuracy they needed. Oh, I know what that is. Each one was a masterpiece fashioned from the finest wood they could find, adorned with carvings that told stories of their ancestors. They practiced in the fading light, throwing spears with precision, their confidence building with each successful toss. With the preparations complete, the hunters shared a moment of silence, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They knew the challenges that lay ahead, but they also understood the bond that tied them together. a unity forged through a shared purpose and effort. As the moon rose, casting a silver glow over the land, they set out into the night, ready to face the mammoth and the wild, relying on the fruits of their labor and the strength of their community.
You've never seen Addle written out in word rows?
No, I know of the actual implement, but I did not know the term for it. And somebody who's taken anthropology and archaeology in high school or college, I should have. But I've seen the implement, the tool. Like, I'm like, oh, that's what it's called.
Yeah. And that is historically accurate because I did research and they used an Addle, especially in the period that we're talking about. They
Yep.
were more, yeah,
Well, and then even I can only again, you're creating the air of it. Imagine hunting a mammoth, and they were in. I mean, they're bigger than elephants. Like to hunt a mammoth, that and colder weather, and you have primitive tools, and they herd together. That had to be something that again carefully coordinated because that would end your life quite easily in a hunt for a mammoth.
yep.
So.
I was just gonna let you struggle through Addle, but I was like, no, I better help her out with that.
Yeah, wasn't sure how to pronounce it when I saw it. I'm like, "Oh, I know this word," but it is.
And I didn't want to interrupt you, so
That's okay. Thank you though. Thank you for giving me that piece of advice. Thank you. But even the like you're talking about making the because I had the interesting to take that course for it, but how they create the clovis, they create the tips of the spears. That's an art skill as well, and a lot of them would sit there. They would sit in groups to actually do it all together and actually create the spear tips. And again, if you get one crack in it, that's one. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to be effective when you spear. So them making it, that's an art form in itself altogether. That's not easy either.
yeah,
And yet it makes you feel, I mean, for me it makes you feel like where ancestors came from. They're hunting these huge beasts, and we get to a time as time goes on where you become more, a lot of the indigenous tribes still traveled, but you weren't hunting these mammoths anymore, mammoth beasts. You weren't being hunted by saber-toothed tigers anymore either, because that's the next scary thing. but
yeah.
but it
And
give
we talk about all those dangers in the last one to wrap it all, put a nice big bow on it, and which you get to read.
Oh, well, there you go. And as I'm talking about it, which I haven't read, I normally do not read the ones that we are reading here, so until we read them.
Yeah.
So
So
you,
I've obviously read them.
okay, you have the next one.
Yeah. The needed sacrifice. In the in the early dawn of a barren landscape, a group of hunters gathered at the edge of a vast plain. The air was crisp, charged with anticipation as the sun began to rise, casting a golden hue over the frost-kissed earth. The hunters, clad in hides, moved with quiet determination, their breath visible in the chill of the morning. They had been tracking a herd of mammoths for days, studying their patterns, and today was the day they would put their plan into action. The leader of the group gestured to a nearby thicket where pikes had been meticulously planted, each weapon tipped with sharp clovis points made of chert glinted ominously in the morning light. The hunters had spent hours crafting these tools, knowing they would be essential for their success. As they approached the designated area, a chorus of trumpeting broke the silence, signaling the presence of the massive beast. The hunters moved stealthily, creating a diversion with torches and branches. The crackling flames and rustling foliage startled the mammoths, drawing their attention away from the hunters' true intention. With a series of guttural calls, they began to guide the herd toward the deadly traps. The mammoths, large and imposing, were initially hesitant, sensing danger, but the hunters persisted, using their atlatls to throw spears that flew with precision, striking the ground near the creatures to spur them forward. The hunters' hearts raced as the colossal animals lumbered closer to the planted pikes. Suddenly, a younger mammoth, curious and unsteady, ventured too close to the traps. The hunters held their breath, waiting for the right moment. With a thunderous crash, the mammoth's weight drove it onto the sharp tips of the pikes, the force of the impact sealing its fate. The group erupted into a muted roar of triumph, their hard work culminating in a successful hunt. With the mammoth secured, the hunters worked swiftly, knowing the importance of preserving the meat and resources. They skillfully carved the prize, using the Clovis points to ensure minimal waste. Each part of the mammoth would serve a purpose: food, tools, and warmth for the coming months. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, the hunters gathered around their prize. They shared stories of their ancestors, the lessons learned from each hunt, and the bonds forged through hardship and triumph. In that moment, they were more than just hunters. They were a community unified in their connection to the land and the ancient practices that ensured their survival. With the stars emerging one by one in the night sky, the group prepared to return to their home, their hearts full of gratitude for the bounty that would sustain them through the harshness of winter.
I do like, again, and I like that. That's some of the knowledge that you see is lost, especially as we've gone into the more of the colonizing and consumerism type era that we were in. We're actually starting, more people are starting to come out of it. Um, that they're preserving everything and working fast enough, because as we were talking about, there may be other predators about, which probably mentioned in the next story. But all of those things would be tools. The bones, I know that they would, especially in the rib bones, you could make houses out of them. You would take and put the hides over the top. You can make needles out of a lot of the bones, a lot of the fat. Everything would be preserved because it has a use. As where today, I feel we're a little bit more, or at least some people are a little bit more wasteful.
Yeah,
So thank you for putting that in there. Even though, as you said, it's keeping to the like you keep to the tradition. That's something traditionally I think people should actually. Some say it's survival mode, but it's more of being respectful to the creature that gave its life. Right? It was provided for. It was there, and to not waste any of it.
yeah,
And so now we come to the dangers. I shall continue. The dangers we meet. As the hunters began their journey home, under the pale light of the moon, a sense of unease settled over them. The thrill of the hunt was still fresh in their minds, but with it came the weight of the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the vast wilderness. Each step taken through the frost covered ground echoed their resolve, yet the wilderness held countless threats. The first challenge came swiftly. A rustle in the underbrush sent a shiver through the group. Eyes darted to the source of the sound, and a low growl reverberated the air. A pack of wolves, their eyes glinting with shards of ice in the moonlight. The hunters instinctively formed a tighter circle, gripping their weapons tightly. The wolves, hungry and emboldened by the scent of their recent success, prowled closer, testing the resolve of the men. With an unified shout, the hunters brandished their spears, the flickering firelight reflecting off the sharp points, and the wolves retreated, sensing the strength in numbers. Relieved but not complacent, they pressed on, their hearts still racing. The journey through the dense forest was fraught with tension. The quiet of the night was deceptive. Danger could strike at any moment. As they navigated a narrow path between towering trees, a sudden rumble echoed from above. A massive branch, weakened by age and moisture, broke free and crashed to the ground mere feet away. The hunters quickly scrambled to avoid the falling debris, narrowly escaping the potential disaster. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictable forces of nature that could turn their journey into a nightmare. Moving forward, they crossed a small stream, its waters shimmering under the moonlight. The chill of the air clung to their skin, and they paused for a moment to drink. But as they knelt, a rustle in the leaves caught their attention. A large bear emerged, drawn by the scent of their presence. It stood tall, its fur bristling as it eyed the men with curiosity and hunger. The hunters stood frozen, their hearts pounding in their chests. They had little choice but to face the creature. With a deep breath, they raised their spears, shouting in unison to assert their dominance. The bear, sensing the threat posed by the group, huffed and turned back into the shadows, leaving the men shaken but alive. As they continued, fatigue began to set in. The weariness of the previous night's preparations and the exertion of the hunt weighed heavily on their limbs. They knew they had to remain vigilant. Exhaustion could lead to mistakes. The cold air bit at their skin, and they could feel the stark chill creeping into their bones. They shared hushed words of encouragement, reminding one another of their strength and the bond they shared as brothers. But nature was not finished with them yet. As they traversed a rocky terrain, the ground beneath them shifted unexpectedly. Small landslides sent loose stones tumbling down the slopes, and one of the hunters lost his footing, twisting his ankle painfully. The group quickly gathered around him, concern etched on their faces. They fashioned a makeshift splint from sturdy branches and wrapped it tightly, ensuring he would continue the journey. It was a testament to their unity. They could not leave anyone behind. As they neared familiar territory, the scent of smoke from that village wafted through the air, bringing a sense of relief. However, their journey was not yet over. A distant commotion echoed through the trees, shouts and the clash of weapons approaching cautiously, they discovered a skirmish between rival tribes. The hunters exchanged worried glances, knowing that any misstep could lead to conflict. They chose to remain hidden, watching as the chaos unfolded before them. With patience, they waited for an opening, understanding that their safety lay in discretion. When the fighting subsided, they seized the moment and slipped away, hearts pounding with adrenaline. At last they burst through the tree line and into the clearing of their village. The familiar sights and sounds enveloped them warmth. They were home, their journey filled with the tribulations, but also strengthened by the trials they had faced together. As they gathered around the fire, sharing stories of their adventure, they knew that they had triumphed over more than just the hunt. They had confronted the raw power of nature, the threats of predators, and the potential for conflict with others. In the end, it was their unity and resilience that had carried them home, a bond forged in the face of danger, had solidified by the shared experiences of survival. So, you could go in depth, or though we could ask other people on how even just the emergency medical preparation. I know there's people that know the herbs, there's elders that know the herbs, there's people that are studying herbal medicine as well. Um, but even that survival is important. Like how do you interact with a bear? How would you splint it? I mean, it wouldn't be a simple split. There's certain medicines you know on the fly if you're in the woods, right? If you're out in the bush. But how do you react to other animals, especially if you're being hunted?
Yeah.
Those are survival experiences, but again, as you said, the rawness of Mother Nature itself, resilience, unity, not being alone. Those are things that would be detrimental in society is just being alone in those times. That would be a death sentence.
Yeah, but there are people that have survived that were just normal people that survived in the wilderness.
Yes, but how much of it, like, okay, so you're talking more back. Okay, you got mammoths, you got like saber-tooth tiger, you got bears, you got wolves. Yes, you could survive alone, but that was rare. Most of the time, you would come across people or something that would really test that solitude.
Yeah.
So I like, and then the warm screening, I like all of it.
As I said, I put a nice little bow on it. I told you about the dangers that they faced, but I also put a I guess a happy spin on it for when they got home. And they're like, well, we we don't have to worry because we faced all those things, but now we're home and we can actually relax a little bit.
No. And how much of it's like when you get home, like you said, you relax. You come home and you're like, oh my God, it's safe, right? You have the comforts of it.
Yeah.
You're familiar with it. So I do. I like all that. All of it. um, so I'm gonna ask is like what kind of was the inspiration or the seed that you had for this series?
It just something like I just random, just like, oh well, I could do a story about that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like I asked you, like in the other Discord, like, oh, do you think that it would be interesting to do a story? Because I actually put it in one of the Discords, and then you answered like, yeah, I would want to hear about that. So I was like, well, okay, as long as somebody else has a has an interest in it, I know that I can be able to put something together for it.
I mean, a lot of people. I mean, we've seen a few of the movies even in the last few years. What was it? 10,000 BC was one of them, or whatnot. So they kind
Yeah,
of go into the rawness of survival, but also where we came. Like, where did we come from? Where did we? We had to make weapons. We had to defend ourselves. Where and what was the reasoning behind that? How was it done? So those
yeah,
stories are a lot that intrigue people, and you still have we have archaeologists digging up stuff, right? Anthropologists who study even the tribes that are a bit isolated in the Amazon and other places. So it's different because you know, like, why wouldn't you be interested in the reasoning of the psychology of where we come from, how
yeah,
we think, how we survive? That is a way to help honor that past, but at the same time heal anything that would be survival mode that could be in our brains today. It's definitely an interest and an interesting subject to write on.
yeah.
I still think a
And
lot
that's
of
also keeping the thread going of maybe somebody way back then, or maybe even in the future, taking that and running with it and expanding on it like I did.
yeah, I still think that again a lot of your content is can worth making into movies. Even just you could start off as this in the beginning of them as a storyteller vibe or a series or a mini series of sitting underneath the great tree and telling these stories in a timeless place, and then creating little mini stories or mini movies off of it, mini series in a way that show what people felt, how they dealt with, kind of where they come from and where they're going, even, and how it's all connected together. That would be a really cool series, I think, to put out there.
Yeah.
And then you keep overflowing with more stories. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we haven't, we we know we're reading from the next series, which are rewrites that you so inspired by some of the children's stories, if that what it was.
Yeah, the children like everyday like children's stories. Like I've done one for Bambi, and then Goldilocks, which I got to rework the ending
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if I'll get copyrighted for it. And then the one that you told me that um, what was it, the almond, or what was it? You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the Owl Moon is a book.
Yeah.
Yep, and I
And
kind of
then I did, yeah, then I did my interpretation, or an indigenous interpretation of um, Indian in the Cupboard, the movie, book, whatever, Indian in the Cupboard. Except for I completely changed it to where I won't get copyrighted because I flipped it and did an interpretation of it.
okay. Okay, so which one do you want to go into? Do you want to do the owl? The how do you pronounce it? Is it
Muput.
Moopuch? The owl,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
We
or
can
we.
do that one if you want. It's whatever, whichever one you want to do. You're the you're the boss here.
I'm not a
I'm just
boss.
the one with the stories.
I'm not a boss. I'm not a boss.
Oh, okay. These are some.
We're sharing stories. How's that sound? I say we do creation as a gift, which would be the The
The last
interpretation,
one.
yeah, your interpretation on the Indian in the cupboard, kind of that story.
I I think you're gonna like that
Okay, I say we do that one then.
one. Okay. Are you gonna read it or am I gonna read it?
I think you have this one. I read the last one.
Okay. Okay, just making sure. This is Creation is a Gift. Once, in a village nestled between towering mountains and lush forests, a young boy discovered a majestic hollow tree while exploring the woods. Its gnarled roots twisted into the earth, and its trunk was wide enough to hold secrets within. The boy, filled with excitement, decided to place his hand carved toys, a warrior, a wise elder, and a playful animal inside the hollow. Each toy was crafted with love and care, reflecting the spirit of the village. As he placed the toys within the tree, a soft glow emanated from the hollow. To his astonishment, yes, the toys sprang to life, their spirits awakened by the magic of the ancient tree. The warrior brandished his tiny spear, the elder shared wisdom, and the animal danced joyfully, filling the clearing with laughter and energy. At first, the boy reveled in this newfound adventure. The toys engaged in playful battles, reenacting the stories of old, and the boy felt a surge of power as he watched them come alive. But soon the excitement spiraled out of control. The warrior, driven by the thrill of battle, began to challenge the elder, and the playful animal, eager to join in, stirred chaos. The laughter turned to shouts as the toys fought furiously, their small bodies colliding with immense energy. As the ruckus grew, the boy realized that he had unleashed more than just playful spirits. He had awakened the whirlwind of emotions and energies that threatened to overwhelm him and the peaceful harmony of the village. Concerned, he ran to the village shaman, a wise figure revered for their deep understanding of the world and its mysteries. The shaman followed the boy to the hollow tree, observing the pandemonium inside. With a calm presence, the shaman raised a hand, and the toys froze mid-action, their vibrant spirits subdued. The boy looked up, eyes wide with worry, as the shaman began to speak. Child of the forest, you have brought forth the spirits of your creations, but you must remember that every action carries a consequence. You acted out of joy, but in your excitement you did not consider the balance of the world. Each spirit has its own desires, and when unleashed without thought, they can create turmoil. The boy nodded, understanding dawning upon him. The shaman continued. Creation is a gift, but with it comes responsibility. Before you act, pause and reflect on the paths your choices may carve. Life is a delic- life is a balance. Life is a dance of balance. Each step must be taken with care and consideration. With the shaman's guidance, the boy learned to calm the spirits and return them to their tranquil state. He thanked the shaman and promised to be more mindful in the future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the village, the boy placed his hand carved toys back into the hollow tree, but this time he whispered words of gratitude and intention, honoring the spirits within. From that day forward, the boy shared his stories with others, teaching them the importance of thoughtful actions. And in the heart of the village, the hollow tree stood as a reminder. Before one leaps into the unknown, they must first consider the whispers of the winds and the echoes of their choices.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. I was like, I was gonna talk. I'm like, wait, it's not still muted. Um. Okay, so that is a good spin on it, and told from again. I like the whole hollow tree thing. In fact, there was something in a vision that I had recently connected to somebody else. Their son was actually coming to them, and on the other side, there was a hollow tree with all these treasure things in it. And I was just like, I don't understand the significance of that, but you picked up that in the story without you even knowing that I had went through and connected to other people because I didn't say anything on that. And yet it came out in the story that you just told. But it is the what you're talking about, creation is a gift, and there is a responsibility even in the art you see or any of your stories that you're telling, because it could be taken the wrong way. That energy is out. And then he's creating, that boy helped create, even though it went with joy, the intent was joy, but it was the responsibility is creating a smaller world within another world
Yeah.
that's still able to interact with each other, which brings us, as we were talking about, how different timelines, different spirits, like we were talking about earlier, interact with this world, and how there's a balance even to that, even to when people miss spirits or miss their family and try to bring them back in this world. It creates turmoil.
Yeah. But I don't think that the whispering of his intentions into the hollow tree would have did anything, to be honest,
No, he had.
because because the hollow tree just seemed like it was just a vessel to bring life to certain to those things that could fit inside the hollow,
Mhm.
inside of its space.
He did it with the intention of excitement and playing, right? Of creating, of the imaginative, right? Thinking outside the box. So
Yeah.
that was the intention, right? And so I see the air of responsibility as a creator. What do you, if you're giving somebody the key to unlock stuff to be awakened and aware, what are you doing that? What's the key that you gave? The piece of information, what truth, what is it that was the seed that was planted? With what intent? Was it a seed to destroy? No, his was to play, right? So
Yeah.
that changes. I think it would eventually balanced out because the initial intent was to do that. And you see that in a lot of stories that, I mean, a lot of even religious stories where, okay, we created this and it's like, oh my God, it's out of control. What the heck just happened?
Mm.
So could you, like, this would bring up the question, would, how, because some people do, would you blame creator for creating life? Because they're going through suffering because they don't understand their own free will. How could you blame a creator or the creator for creating life, though?
Yeah. I don't know. Could you? Because in a way, the creation wouldn't be suffering if creator hadn't put forth the manifestation of the creation.
But it also, again, we look at suffering because that's the other thing is karma. People think, oh my God, bad karma. Karma just is a lesson, right? So if you
Yeah.
understand suffering is the lesson, just like in the other story, the Nomad stories, you learn from going through, from breaking your ankle, from, okay, we're not going to do that again, right? So
Yeah.
suffering is something that is supposed to be a learning process, which is part of the creation of life. We see that in every
Yeah.
living thing. So would I blame the creator for creating life and planting a seed? No. You get to experience life.
Mm.
We do. So even if you went through a period of suffering and experience, if you learn from it, we don't continue it. So I wouldn't blame
Yeah.
creator. I would just see where the creation goes in a way, and what's the intent to grow something close to you to be able to understand you. Even,
But some people lack the capacity to understand. They would rather be like, okay, I get what you're where you're coming from, but I don't get why you're coming from that position.
yes.
Like we say, a lot of people listen to respond instead of listen to understand, or you know.
Well, that would be a part of the learning process as well.
Yeah.
So, but it does ultimately, because the way we see, okay, we see like even the trees, right? Like if they're injured or wind comes through, it will balance itself. That is the golden
Yeah.
ratio. So automatically, regardless if they're still in the learning process, still going through the loops, the groundhog days, which you mentioned earlier, there's a learning process, right? There's a way to get out of the loop. There's a way to change the variables. There's a way so that it doesn't repeat itself. And a lot of that
Yeah.
has to do with the unity. As more people come together and go, wait a second, I learned this lesson, maybe I can help you out. Then this way we don't, they're not, they're not repeating the lesson. It's not taking up or harming other people. So there's ways to help each other through that unity experience, just like what the hunters did.
Yeah.
Whether they understand it, they might understand it later on, but it would come eventually, or as balance dictates, Mother Nature reclaims that creation.
Yeah.
I enjoyed a lot of these stories. So, again, a lot of good teaching points you have and many perspectives. Well, thank you.
I like to leave them open ended so that you can talk about it.
Which we do. And I wish that, again, we wish that there was more people involved. So maybe going forward, there'll be more people coming in. We try getting them together, but sometimes not everybody can gather at the same times. So maybe switch up the times a little. I guess we can try doing an evening one, an evening podcast, and see if anybody would like to come in a little later.
Yeah.
I know that you have
I don't,
more more stories.
we have way more.
I know we have you have so many
We
of
could
them.
go all day if we needed to and not finish.
I know we could. So maybe at some point when we have more free time, we could do a few in a day. Um, so we're looking forward to hearing more of them. I know you're creating more of them. Actually, me as you were as we were reading these, and it's the first time I've read them. I know you had of them. I was seeing a lot of different things, content to even paint, a lot of scenarios, a lot of scenes. So it's an inspiration to actually hear it and hear the perspective, and it is honoring those spirits that passed through these times. Sometimes I get the inspiration to paint them. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we've been going for almost 40 some
About
minutes.
40, yeah, 40 some.
So with that, we'll leave the next stories up. Maybe put in a poll up like we did before. I'll do that on Facebook. We just kind of been getting. I've been kind of getting back into stuff. It took a minute to pause to realign things, but we'll put a poll up. See what stories people would like. We'd like people to join the next podcast as well, and I will put all your
So
information.
join the Discord,
Join
right?
join the
Join the
Discord.
Discord.
We have currently we're doing this in Chief's Powwow. I know you have the other stories, and that is it's up to Becky here if you would like to invite them to the other ones. Um,
All
and
you have to do is ask.
yeah, and we're in the story time chat. We have other story time chats we could go into, but for now we're in a story time chat. More people are welcome. You're also welcome to buy the Tales on the Winds of Times, and also we're waiting for the other book, but there seem to be little bumps. I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll work.
a little hold. It will. You'll sort it all itself all out.
Yep.
For now, it's on hold.
It's on hold, but as that comes out, we'll help get again. We'll start advertising that. Maybe read a few from there as well. So thank you, Bucky, for allowing me to read and for listening.
Yep. Thank you for reading it.
And on to the next.